Shedeur Sanders doesn't flinch. Whether it's post-game interviews, locker room cameras, or Twitter mobs, he holds his ground with a calm that's rare for someone so young. But behind that composure lies an exhausting routine, constant visibility, relentless judgment, and the pressure to be both athlete and entertainer. Bruce Arians has seen enough. His defense of Sanders cuts through the noise, not to praise a player's style, but to critique a system that demands performance for an audience that's rarely watching the game. In this new football economy, visibility often trumps value. Arians' words are a call to rethink what we reward. Sanders is navigating a landscape built on attention, not achievement. And while he's handled it with grace, the system itself is cracking. The real story isn't just about one quarterback. It's about what we're turning the game into and who might get lost in the process. The conversation around Shedeur Sanders didn't start on a football field. It started in the echo chamber of modern media, a space where being seen matters more than being ready, and where every confident glance or viral clip becomes part of a story that's bigger than the game itself. Shedeur Sanders is undeniably talented. That's not the debate. The debate is what his rise represents. Because this isn't about stats. It's about status. It's about how the NFL and the media engine surrounding it have turned football into a stage performance, where quarterbacks aren't just judged by how they play, but by how they trend. And Shedeur, he trends. A lot. He's the son of Deion Sanders, a college football standout, and he walks into the room with composure most rookies couldn't fake on their best day. But that aura, confident, calculated, camera-ready, has made him a magnet, not just for praise, but for controversy, and not necessarily of his own making. The noise around him isn't about failure. It's about focus. Or, depending on who you ask, the lack of it. That's where Bruce Arians stepped in and shook the table. Arians didn't come after Shedeur's talent. He didn't question his potential. What he questioned was why there was so much noise in the first place. Why the media was obsessed with every micro-expression. Why viral fame had started to feel like a prerequisite for quarterback success. And more importantly, why the league was letting the system run unchecked. His comments weren't disrespectful. They were direct. He said what a lot of old-school minds were thinking. This isn't how you build a great football player. This is how you build a spectacle. But the spectacle doesn't want to be questioned. So when Arians voiced concern about the media turning young stars into digital celebrities, he didn't just face disagreement. He became part of the story. The content machine did what it does best. Twisted a reasonable take into a culture war headline. Arians versus Sanders. Old school versus new school. Coach versus creator. And with that, the cycle fed itself again. This is the core of the problem. Not just that Shedeur is famous, but that fame has become the metric. The NFL isn't immune to this shift. In fact, it's leaned into it. Teams amplify the brand before the player. Broadcasters hype personalities before matchups. Social media accounts post more memes than film breakdowns. The sport hasn't been hijacked. It's just evolved, and not necessarily for the better. In this environment, Shedeur is a perfect product, not in a negative sense, but in a literal one. He is composed, well-spoken, branded, and connected. He plays with fire and speaks with clarity. He's the kind of modern athlete who understands that football isn't just a game anymore, it's a platform. But Bruce Arians wasn't questioning if Shedeur could handle the platform. He was asking why we created a system where that platform matters more than performance. And he's not wrong. We reached a point where media exposure outweighs development, where every young athlete is expected to be a personality before they're a professional, where the pressure to entertain has become just as intense as the pressure to execute. It's not just unhealthy, it's unsustainable. The clash here isn't between generations. It's between values. On one side, discipline, repetition, patience. The belief that greatness is built in quiet moments. On the other, branding, presence, persona. The belief that success is measured in reach, relevance, and real-time attention. And right now, branding is winning. That's not Shedeur's fault. That's the fault of a system that's incentivized the wrong things. Media outlets prioritize engagement over insight. Teams build hype before depth charts. Fans consume narratives more than actual play analysis. In that environment, Shedeur is doing exactly what he needs to do to thrive, and he's doing it better than most. But Arians is looking long-term, because what happens when the attention stops matching performance? What happens when a young player who was never given time to fail suddenly stumbles? The system that built them up isn't built to support them. It's built to move on. That's what Arians was warning about. Not just the burnout, but the backlash. Shedeur's charisma isn't the problem. His pedigree isn't the problem. The problem is that the coverage around him is so inflated, so constant, that it risks setting expectations he was never meant to carry alone. Because when a quarterback is treated like a celebrity first, his success becomes about more than wins. It becomes about maintaining an image. And no athlete should have to carry that burden before their rookie year is even over. There's also a bigger issue, the way the media handles dissent. When Arians spoke, there was an opportunity to pause, to ask, are we pushing too hard, too fast? But instead of reflection, the system responded with amplification. His comments were boiled down into simplified, shareable sound bites. Not thoughtful critique, just conflict content. Another hit for the algorithm. And that's the tragedy of the moment. Even resistance becomes content. This is a paradox Bruce Arians tried to highlight. You can't criticize the spotlight without getting caught in it. You can't slow the machine without becoming another gear in it. So instead of helping young players navigate fame, we're pushing them through cycles of engagement that don't care about their development, only their visibility. And this has real consequences. It distorts perception. It warps priorities. It creates pressure on young players to be personalities at all times, even when what they really need is privacy, mentorship, and time. Because development isn't flashy. Growth doesn't trend. But that's where the real work happens. And that's what the current system is eroding. Shedeur is still early in his career. There's time. But the expectations being placed on him are disproportionate to the stage he's on. And not because he's underperforming, but because the media has elevated him into a symbol. And symbols aren't allowed to make mistakes. What we're watching isn't just the rise of a quarterback. It's the rise of a new playbook. One where performance is only part of the equation and presence is everything. One where young athletes are measured by how quickly they can go viral, how quotable they are in interviews, how effectively they can represent a narrative. And while Shedeur may thrive in that space, others might not. That's why Arians' message matters. Because the next quarterback might not have the same poise. The next rookie might not know how to handle the spotlight. And by the time anyone notices, it might be too late. So the question is simple. Do we want to build players, or do we want to build brands? Because those aren't always the same thing. And when we start confusing the two, we risk losing the essence of the game entirely. Let us know what you think. Are media expectations for young players becoming too much? Is the NFL still about football, or has it become just another entertainment machine? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories that cut through the noise and break down what's really happening in sports culture, hit that subscribe button. Because this is only the beginning. The next headline is already in the works, and the machine's always hungry. It's no longer a question of whether the line between sport and spectacle is blurred. It's that the line barely exists anymore. Shedeur Sanders is in the middle of that shift. A gifted quarterback, no doubt. Calm, articulate, confident in ways that command attention. But what's made him a media obsession isn't just what he does on the field. It's what he represents off of it. He's the son of one of the most iconic sports personalities ever. He's smooth under pressure. He's made for a media moment. And now, that's part of the job description. Not just being talented, not just being prepared, but knowing how to hold a mic, deliver a headline, go viral without ever flinching. Shedeur doesn't just fit the mold of the modern athlete. He is the mold. But Bruce Arians? He's cut from something different. He's part of a football generation that sees media as something you deal with after the work is done. A distraction you manage, not a currency you chase. And what he sees now is a system where the spotlight is coming before the substance, before the success, before the development is even complete. Arians didn't come out swinging. He didn't take a personal jab. He took aim at a media culture that's inflating young players into icons long before they've had a chance to be athletes. And the response to his warning? Loud, defensive, viral. Because in 2025, even pushing back against media hype is media hype. You can't say slow down without it being turned into a soundbite. You can't ask for perspective without getting branded as a hater. That's the environment Shedeur is being asked to grow in, one where everyone is either boosting him to the moon or waiting for him to fall. And for now, he's navigating it brilliantly. He's handling the press. He's keeping his cool. He's playing smart. But the issue isn't how he's managing it today. It's what this constant pressure does over time. Because no one, no matter how confident, can carry the weight of an entire narrative forever. And right now, that's what he's being asked to do. Every game he plays isn't just a test of skill. It's a referendum on modern sports culture. Every press conference isn't just a post-game recap. It's part of a larger story about fame, media, and the shifting identity of the American athlete. Shedeur is no longer a quarterback. He's a symbol, and that's the problem. Because symbols aren't allowed to just be. They can't mess up. They can't take a back seat. They can't have an off day. They have to embody whatever version of greatness we've assigned to them. And if they deviate from that script, the backlash is immediate. That's why Arians' message landed so hard. Not because it was controversial, but because it was true. We're watching football change in real time. Not just the pace of play or the schemes on the field, but the entire culture surrounding it. Players used to prove themselves in silence. Now they're expected to be brand ambassadors before their first full season. Coaches used to be the ones shaping narratives. Now they're reacting to them in real time, trying to protect players from the fallout of a misinterpreted clip. And none of this is happening by accident. This is design. The media industry thrives on this chaos. It profits from it. The more clicks, the more takes. The more takes, the more reaction. The more reaction, the more exposure. The cycle doesn't just run, it spirals. And when a player like Shedeur gets caught in that spiral, the outcome isn't determined by how well he plays. It's determined by how well he performs in the drama of perception. The system doesn't care if he's ready. It only cares if he's relevant. This is what Bruce Arians was calling out. Not Shedeur himself, but the culture that put someone like him on a pedestal before he's had the chance to build a foundation. He was calling out the machine, the system, the constant demand for content, and the total disregard for what that demand costs. Because attention doesn't come free. It comes with expectations. And when those expectations are based on branding rather than football, the result is a player being evaluated by a standard that's got nothing to do with actual performance. It's no longer about how well you execute a drive. It's about how well you manage the narrative. And if that sounds exhausting, it's because it is. We're not just asking athletes to compete. We're asking them to entertain, inspire, market, promote, respond, and always be on. And Shedeur? He's doing it all. But that doesn't mean he should have to. The bigger issue is the pressure the system creates for every young player who comes next. Because the Shedeur model is now the blueprint. Talent alone isn't enough. You have to have the personality, the quotes, the viral potential. You have to know how to play both the game and the game around the game. That's not football. That's media performance with a football filter. And the cost? We're already seeing it. Players are burning out faster. Rookies are under scrutiny before they've even had a proper training camp. Coaches are being asked to manage egos shaped by Instagram followers, not just on-field results. And the fans? They're being conditioned to care more about headlines and highlights. It's all backwards. So when Arians says, let's protect young players from this machine, he's not resisting progress. He's resisting a kind of hollow success. One built on perception, not process. One that skips the grind and sells the image. And again, none of this is Shedeur's fault. He's doing what the system rewards. He's staying composed. He's embracing the moment. He's doing everything right. But that's the problem. Everything is expected. And it's expected now. There's no buffer anymore. No margin for growth. No space to fail privately and get better before being fed to the cameras. That's what's been lost. Shedeur isn't just being evaluated as a player. He's being treated like a brand, a symbol, a benchmark, and number 21-year-old should be asked to carry that alone. That's where we are now. This is the new NFL, a place where stories take precedence over substance, where viral moments overshadow actual development, and where even a veteran coach trying to speak truth is turned into clickbait for daring to pump the brakes. And if we don't recognize the damage this cycle does, not just to individual players, but to the game itself, we're going to look up one day and realize that football is no longer the main attraction. It's just the excuse. The product has shifted. And the Shedeur Sanders saga is a perfect example of what happens when a player becomes a storyline before becoming a pro. It's not a warning for him. It's a warning for all of us. This is what happens when performance becomes secondary to presence. When every move a young quarterback makes is followed not by coaching notes, but by comment sections. When the first reaction to a post-game press conference is analysis, it's a meme. That's where we are. And Shedeur Sanders is the center of it, whether he has to be or not. It's not that Shedeur is doing anything wrong. He's doing everything right by modern standards. He's confident without being reckless. He communicates clearly. He's not falling for bait. He stays composed while the entire sports media cycle circles him, like vultures looking for the next clip to go viral. But the more he succeeds in navigating the storm, the more pressure the system puts on him to keep doing it perfectly. And the more he delivers, the more people demand, because that's the double bind. If you shine under the spotlight stays. It doesn't move on. It gets hotter. It gets closer. And it starts turning everything into content. Even your mistakes, even your silence. That's what Bruce Arians was getting at. He's been around long enough to know the difference between real development and artificial hype. He's seen quarterbacks come and go. He's watched players break through expectations, and others break under them. So when he says a media frenzy is hurting the game, he's not complaining. He's warning. And the response? The media that Arians criticized proved his point. His call for moderation became another trending headline. His attempt to de-escalate the noise only amplified it. His comments, calm, clear, honest, were twisted into a storyline about generational tension. Another thing to debate, tweet about, breakdown, and reaction videos. The irony is brutal. And Shedeur? He's still right there in the middle of it, having to answer for comments he didn't make, critiques he didn't ask for, and standards he didn't create. The coverage isn't really about him anymore. It's about what he means. To the league, to the culture, to the digital sports economy. Shedeur Sanders is now a stand-in for a bigger conversation about the future of football. And that's incredibly unfair, to him and to every player who might follow the same path. Because when attention outweighs achievement, it distorts everything. Suddenly, a decent game becomes disappointing. A brief moment of personality becomes a distraction. Every minor action gets inflated into a symbol for something much bigger than the actual player. This is the trap the modern sports machine creates. It pulls young athletes into a narrative before they've had the time or space to define themselves on their own terms. They don't get the grace to grow. They get the pressure to perform as finished products from day one. And the consequences are real. For the players, for the teams, and for the sport itself. You can already feel it happening. The storylines don't stick to the season anymore. They evolve daily. And because everyone is constantly talking, the volume just keeps rising. What gets lost in the chaos is the football, the skill development, the leadership, the grind. Instead of building great players, we're building clickable moments. And then acting surprised when players burn out or struggle under that weight. This is exactly why Arians' comments mattered. Because he wasn't saying Shedeur wasn't ready for attention. He was saying the attention isn't ready for him. It's reckless. It's nonstop. And it's being treated like part of the game when really it's a threat to it. But acknowledging that would mean questioning how the league markets its stars. How media outlets build their coverage. How fans consume content. And that's a lot harder than just labeling an old coach out of touch. That's the path of least resistance now. Dismiss the concern, celebrate the chaos, and keep pushing forward. But sooner or later, the crash comes. Because no system built entirely on hype can support real growth. And Shedeur, for all his polish and presence, is still early in his journey. He's got years ahead to define who he is as a quarterback. But if this continues, will he even get that chance without constant interruption? Will he be allowed to grow without being turned into the next flashpoint every time he breathes differently during a post-game presser? Because right now, we're not just watching a football player. We're watching a broadcast, a stream of curated reactions and inflated expectations, happening in real time and built to sell something other than the sport. The scary thing is, this isn't unique anymore. Shedeur might be the current poster child, but he won't be the last. This cycle is replicating itself. It's being written into scouting reports. Media ready is now a checkbox. Social media reach is a real consideration. That's where we are. So what happens when the next Shedeur doesn't want to play that part? What happens when a gifted young athlete doesn't want to build a brand before they build a stat line? Do they get ignored? Buried? Do they get written off as lacking presence? Because that's the other side of this. The system doesn't just elevate. It excludes. It narrows the definition of success into something shallow and unsustainable. And then it pretends like this is the way things have always been. They haven't. There was a time when quarterbacks were allowed to learn, when rookies weren't expected to be media personalities, when a player's most valuable trait was their work ethic, not their sound bites. And no, going backward isn't the answer, but neither is pretending the current model works. That's the discomfort Bruce Arians was trying to articulate. Not that progress is bad, but that not all progress is healthy. Sometimes growth gets confused with exposure. And exposure, especially when it comes too early, can wreck everything it touches. Right now, Shedeur is holding steady. He's showing maturity beyond his years. But why should he have to? Why is that the baseline now? That's the question nobody wants to ask. Because asking it means rethinking the entire media industrial complex around sports. It means taking a step back. And that's not something the machine is built to do. So we just keep pushing forward. One headline at a time. One quote, one moment, one tweet, until the next story takes over. And Shedeur? He stays in the middle of it all, competing, developing, performing, not just for his team, but for an audience that's always watching, always refreshing, always wanting more. Let us know what you think. Is the spotlight burning too bright, too soon? Are we prioritizing visibility over value? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And subscribe if you're here for the real stories. The ones underneath the stats. The ones inside the drama. The ones no one else wants to slow down long enough to unpack. Because this isn't just sports anymore. It's something else entirely. And we're all complicit.